And I also hope that you are having a good day so far. So today we will be doing our grade 2 English lesson on simple verb tense reviews. So we'll be doing our English grade 2 lesson on simple verb tense review. So even if we listen to the word simple verb tense, right? And then firstly, a verb is a doing word, right? And when it comes to the word tense, right, then we will be talking about the different tenses such as your present tense, your past tense, as well as your future tense, right? And before we start with our lesson, we are going to log into aplusstudents.ca. And when we log into aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of language arts. So we're going to select the subject of language arts and then grade 2. All right, so once we have selected the subject of language arts, grade 2, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of simple verb tense review. So we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of simple verb tense review. All right. So we said our chapter is simple verb tense review. Our subject is English, which is language arts. Grade 2. And our lessons are: is the sentence in the past, present, or future tense? And when we started, I said that when it comes to, if we look at the chapter, right? If we listen to the chapter, it says simple verb tense review, right? Which means that the verb shows action, it's the doing word. And tense shows either past, present, or future tenses, right? So it's basically the action within, or the action, or the doing words within the past, the present, or the future tense. And we are doing our lesson on aplusstudents.ca. And if you want to go back, recap, go over the lesson again, we on aplusstudents.ca. And there we have our chapter, subject, grade 2, as well as our lessons that we are focusing on today. All right, so we're going to start with the different tenses, right? So we said that the lesson is the sentence in the past, present, or the future tense? So when it comes to the present tense, right? Present is something that is basically happening now, right? So present tense verbs, it tells you about something that is happening now. So something that I'm doing now is I'm teaching or I'm tutoring, you are listening, right? It's something that we're doing now. And most of the verb, or let's say most present tense verbs, are regular. right? So when the verb is regular, then they have no ending, or they end in an S, or they end in ES. So they have no ending, right? Or they end in an S, or they end in an ES. And the two verbs that are irregular in the present tense is to be and to have, right? And you just need to remember their forms. So to be and to have, and all we need to remember is their forms. And then we also have the past tense, right? And the past tense verbs, it tells you about something that has happened already. So past tense verb, it tells you about something that has already happened. So it's in the past. It happened already, or it already happened. And most past tense verbs are regular. So most of the past tense verbs are regular, right? And usually if the verb is regular, and then it means that it either ends in ed or just ends in d. Like play and played in the past, watched in the past, jumped in the past. So it is regular and the verb just ends in ed. And some verbs are irregular and in the past tense, and you must just remember the past tense form. And if a verb is irregular, right, then there's no rule like just adding an ed. You are just going to have to remember the whatever the form is. Like for example, sing, sang, run, ran, right? That's how the verb basically changes. It's not just saying you add ed or you add a d. And then we have our future tense verbs, right? And it tells us about something that is going to happen. This is not in the future, it is going to happen. It hasn't happened yet. It must still happen. It is going to happen. And all future tense verbs, they use the word will. The kids will go to the beach, right? I will write in my book. I will write in my journal. So we use basically the word will when it comes in the future, because that word will, it tells us that something must still happen, or it is going to happen, or it will happen. All right. So we said that this is the simple verb tenses. And we are basically going to have to know if something is either in the present, in the past tense, or in the future tense. So now we're going to aplusstudents.ca and we are going to find more about the past tense, present tense, as well as the future tense. So we mentioned that present tense verbs, they tell us something that is happening, or they tell us about something that is going to be happening, right? Or that is happening now, sorry. And we say that most present tense verbs are regular, either no ending or the ending is or es. And when the two verbs are irregular, right, in the present tense, which is either going to be to be or to have, then you must basically just remember their forms. For example, if our present tense, for example, is regular, right? Then we can maybe say the kids walk to school. We say the kids walk to school, or we can say Alex walks to school. Right? There we have an example of the kids either walk or Alex walks. And remember if we are making mention of more than one person doing an action in the present tense, and then our verb does not end in is. But if we are showing that one person is doing something, then our verb ends in is. And when it comes to our irregular present tense, to be or to have, then we can also say things like I go to the beach, or we can say he goes to the park. There we have go and goes. I go to the beach, and he goes to the park or to the beach. Then we have our past tense verb, right? That tells us about something that has already happened. And we said most of our past tense verbs are regular and they end in ed. So if our verbs end in ed, it is like saying I walked, ed, walked to school. I jumped, ed, over the fence. He bunked school, right? So we have walked, jumped, bunked. We played on the jungle gym, right? So these are just examples of regular verbs that ends in ed, right? And then we also have words that are irregular, and you're just going to have to remember their forms, their past tense form. For example, I go to the beach. Yesterday we went to the beach. So go is now, went is in the past. I sing a beautiful song. Yesterday we sang a beautiful song. Right? So that is a few examples of the past tense verbs, whether it is regular, which is the ones on top that ends in ed, or irregular, These ones we're just going to have to remember because there's no rule, because it changes all the time, or the wording changes. And then we have our future tense verbs. And it tells us about something that is going to happen. And all future tense verbs, they use the word will. They use the words will. For example, I will go to school. So will go. I will walk with John. Anna will play with Jane. Right? So that is but a few examples of will go, will play, will walk, will play. Right? So which means our future tense verb, it just ends, or not even ends, we use the word will within that sentence. All right, so now it says, which tense does the sentence use? So we're going to have to say which tense, whether it is the present tense, the past tense, or the future tense. We're going to have to say what tense the specific sentence uses. Becky fills the pail with water. Becky fills the pail with water. So fills is that present tense, past tense, or future tense. Becky fills the pail with water. You look at the descriptions of the present tense verb, past tense verb, as well as the future tense verb. If we look at the word fills, is that present tense, past tense, or future tense? All right. So if we look at that specific word fills, right? Fills, it ends in S, right? So we can say this is a present tense verb. This is a present tense verb. It is happening now because now Becky fills the pail with water. So that is a present tense verb. And we say the ending is in S. It's a present tense verb. Mrs. Merritt sings a pretty song. Mrs. Merritt sings a pretty song. So we need to say which tense does the sentence use. So look at the word sings. Sings, is that in the present tense, past tense, or future tense? Mrs. Merritt sings a pretty song. Is that something that is happening now? Did it happen in the past or it will happen in the future. All right, so sings, right? This specifically gives us an indication that it is in the present tense, firstly, right? And also it ends in S, which means that it is the present tense verb. Present tense verb. Sings, and it ends in S. Maria and Cole skated in the park. They skated in the park. Maria and Cole skated in the park. So Maria and Cole skated in the park. So skated, is that in the present tense, the past tense, or future tense? Skated. And if we look at that word skated, right, we can say skated is in the past tense. And as we can see, that is a regular verb and it ends in ed or d. Because remember, if a word ends in an e, and if it's a regular tense, then we just add a d. So this is a past tense verb. So this is a past tense verb. So it is in the past. Skated. Something that they did already. It already happened. All right. Let's go to our test. So we're going to say, which tense does the sentence use? If it's the present tense, the past tense, or the future tense. So we are going to look at the specific sentence and the word in bold. The clown jumps through the ring. Jumps. So the word jumps. Is that past tense? Is it present tense? Or is it future tense? The clown jumps through the ring. Is that in the past, in the present, or in the future? Jumps. And it ends with an S. The clown jumps through the ring. Is that in the present tense, in the past tense, or in the future tense? So the word jumps that ends in an S. All right, so if we look at that sentence specifically, that word jumps, right? It ends in S. And it's telling us something that the person is doing now, right? It's something that the clown is doing now. which means that it is in the present tense. Something that someone is doing now is the present tense. We will camp for 2 nights. We will camp for 2 nights. So will is there. If will is there in the sentence, is it in the past tense, the present tense, or in the future tense? We will camp for 2 nights. Will. So the word will is there. Does give us an idea that it's in the past, in the present, which is now, or in the future. All right, so will camp for 2 nights. We can say this is in the future. Because remember, we said that in the future we use the word will. So in the future. His dog chased the chipmunk up the tree. So his dog chased the chipmunk up the tree. So his dog chased the chipmunk up the tree. Chased ends in ed. Chased. Is that the past tense, the present tense, or in the future tense? His dog chased the chipmunks up the tree. So chased. Is that past tense? Is that present tense? Or is that future tense? All right, so if we look at the word chased, right, that ends in ed, we can say it's in the past. So this is a past tense. It happened already. Mrs. Merritt sings a pretty song. Mrs. Merritt sings a pretty song. So sings ends in s. Sings. Mrs. Merritt sings a pretty song. The word sings is at the past tense, the present tense, or the future tense. All right, so sings, that also ends in an S. We can say it's something that she's doing now. Mrs. Merritt sings a pretty song. Present tense. Ross will wash the dishes after dinner. Ross will wash the dishes after dinner. So will wash. Is that the past tense, the present tense, or the future tense? Will wash. So will wash, is that the present, the past, or the future? All right, so if we say Ross will wash the dishes after dinner, will wash is the future tense. All right. At party, the sisters danced together. So at the party, the sisters danced together. The word danced is that the past tense, the present tense, or the future tense. Danced. So at the party, the sisters danced together. So danced together. At the party, the sisters danced together. Is that in the past tense, the present tense, or the future tense? All right, so if we look at the word danced that ends in ed, we can say it is in the past tense. Something that they did. They danced together. All right. So Danny will join bike race. Will join. So will join the bike race. So is that the past tense, the present tense, or the future tense? Will join. So Danny will join the bike race. Is that in the past, present, which is happening now, or in the future? It must still happen. Will join. So if we look at the word will join, right? You see it with the future tense. It mentions the word will. So this is the future tense. All right. Parents named the baby after his grandpa. The parents named the baby after his grandpa. So named. Named. Is that the present tense, the past tense, or the future tense? So named. So named ends in ed, right? And this is the parents named the baby after his grandpa, which means that when the baby was born, they gave the baby a name, which is named the baby, which is in the past. Cows eat the grass on the hill. Cows eat the grass on the hill. If you look at the word eat, it's something they're doing now, something they did in the past, or something that they will be doing in the future. Cows eat the grass on the hill. Is that past tense, present tense, or future tense? All right. So if we look at the word eat, right, it's something that they're doing now, which means that it is the present tense. So the last one. Mrs. Harden whistles to her dog. So Miss Harden whistles to her dog. So whistles ends in an S. Whistles to her dog. So it's in the past tense, in the present tense, or in the future tense. So whistles. Mrs. Harden whistles to her dog. All right, so if she whistles to her dog, we can say that's in the present tense. All right. So this was basically our chapter on simple verb tense review, right? And we see simple verb tense review is, if we look at the word verb, it is an action that takes place. But now the verb tense means it is the action that takes place either in the present, which is now, in the past, which happened already, or in the future, which will still happen. And that is even how we break down the chapter, which is simple verb tense review. All right. So if we go into our lesson again, right? Because we're just going to recap. We said that when it comes to past, present, and future tense, right? We have present tense verbs, and the present tense verbs, it tells you about something that is happening now. So it tells us about something that is happening now. And we said most of the verb tenses, right, are regular, which means that it either just ends in an S or it ends in an ES. And then we have the past tense verb, right? And this tells you about something that has already happened. Then we had word like skated, danced, right? Those are all words in the past tense. So past tense, it tells us about something that has already happened. And we said when it comes to the past tense, in most of the verbs are regular. And if it's regular, it means that it only ends in ed. Washed, jumped, played, skated, right? So those are examples of past tense verbs, and it basically ends in ed. Those are regular past tense verbs. And then we also have irregular past tense, right? which means that you must just remember the past tense form. Like the example, sing, sang, go, goes, right? The wording changes. And then we have the future verb tense, which tells us about something. Oh, we first said that the future tense, it will end in will. So the future tense tells us about something that is going to happen. It is going to. And when it comes to the future tense, it says that all future tense verbs, it uses the word will. You see that the future tense, it ends in the, we use the word will. And if we look at these words here in the box, right? On the one side, we have the present tense, then we have the past, then we have the future. Then we have walk or walks, that is in the present. With the present tense to be or to have, we can also say, for example, go and goes. Then we have the past tense, which is your walked, jumped, seated, right? So in the past, our regular verb ends in ed. But our irregular verb, it's like the whole form changes. Like go and went. All right. So this is basically our simple. So this is our simple verb tense review, right? Where it is verbs that is in the different verb tenses, which is either present tense form verb, past tense verb, or the future tense verb. All right, so grade 2, we have now reached the end of our lesson on simple verb tense review. You should have a great day further. Goodbye.